I'm not even supposed to be here today.
This isn't a video I was planning to make so soon. Not only for the usual reasons that it got bumped up because of opportunity and issues with finding information about a few of the older games I want to look at someday, not just because modern titles don't do as well on this channel, but also because it requires me to make a difficult admission. See, back in the mid-2010s, I was a brony.
Nobody cares.
A lot of folks had a similar phase. I was going through a rough patch, and it turned out candy-colored horses were exactly what I needed to help me through to the other side. Now, I didn't have a special jar or anything, but I did watch the first 4 seasons, one of the movies, and had a few pieces of merch. It was definitely a phase, as I recently tried to rewatch an episode and noped out Bunny quick. But there is something about that generation of ponies' character design, the world, the monsters, and even the cast that I still find compelling. It tracks, then, that I was intrigued when a fan-made button basher called Fighting is Magic was announced. After a lot of hard work put mostly to bed by a cease and desist, the main 6 team decided to rework their concept into something that didn't infringe on Mega Titan Hasbro's copyrights. I'm Eric J. Chucky, and welcome to Violent Profiles, where we discuss obscure fighting games and the rosters that define them. If you could stamp your hoof into that like button and use your horse telekinesis to manipulate the subscribe, I'd be mighty appreciative. Constructive feedback and sharing also help, and helping is a key cornerstone of friendship, which I hear is pretty magical. Fighting is Magic actually came out in fully playable form, the near-finished build of the game being polished by some dedicated fans before making it publicly available on popular Pony News fan site Equestria Daily for free in 2014. But we're not here to talk about Fighting is Magic. I don't want to talk about 12 of the most popular characters in a wildly popular cartoon. I want to talk about their WeirdWish.com cousins. Wait, is that meme dated now? Are we cracking on Shein instead? God, I'm old. My mockery isn't accurate anyhow. Following the C&D, showrunner of Friendship is Magic Lauren Faust offered her services to Main 6 to help them create original characters that embodied the spirit of their inspiration. The reworked Them's Fightin' Herds finally dropped for really real in early 2020, which, as you might expect, heavily impacted their promising potential in the in-person competitive tournament scene. But before we get into what happened between 2020 and today, let's talk about the game itself, and of course the characters. A 4-button fighting system not dissimilar from NetherRealm's Injustice 2 with a light, medium, heavy, and magic button. Sometimes the tech in Them's Fightin' Herds feels a little dense, but I'll accept that for how unique and satisfying a lot of the moves are. Everyone has a super meter that functions as it does in other games, as well as a magic meter that works a little differently depending on the fighter. It helps the characters feel even more like individuals. While you can easily see correlations to the original cast of the show if you're a fan, they still feel like their own distinct creations. There was supposed to be a more fleshed out, developed story, but part of the game's unfortunate ending means it was cut significantly short. Suffice it to say, the land of Fenum is beset by predators who haven't been seen since they were banished by the Horned Prophet years ago. They've escaped their prison and are demanding the location of the Prophet's key, an artifact instrumental in their original exile. The Council of Ungulates agrees that they should locate the key, if only to use it in resealing the predators. Each nation of Fenum is told to select a champion, and the Council will hold a competition to see who is the most worthy of taking up the task. The predators are shadow-bodied creatures, the lupine fluffers, feline flopsy, serpentine cuddles, and ursine huggles. There's also an avian one, Flappy, but unlike the rest, they don't appear in the final boss rush that is the last contest of arcade mode, nor the salt mine in what exists of story mode. A figure known as the Devourer is mentioned as the leader of the predators and the one who led them to freedom, but is never seen. One can assume they were intended to be the final boss of story mode. Let's start in earnest with Arizona. This cowgirl is rough and tumble, often charging heedlessly into danger to protect her family and fight for the things she believes in. Arizona's personality is portrayed mechanically by making her a rushdown character who thrives in the opponent's face. She has a cool set of command grabs with her magic button lasso, which fill up her magic meter and enable special attacks. Given her personality, Red Bandana, being the only roster member with a fleshed out story mode chapter, and being voiced by Tara Strong, the most famous actress on the roster and an original MLP VO herself, one could consider Arizona the main character in the same way most would call Ryu the main character of Street Fighter. Her analog from the show is the stalwart, hardworking Earth pony Applejack. Them's Fightin' Herds doesn't have any endings, unfortunately, but there is plenty of delightful character chatter on the loading screens and during the intros. So between that and the supplemental material provided by Main 6 for the game, we still have plenty to go on to understand who these characters are and why they fight. Next up is Velvet Hoofstrong Daughter, a reindeer with a posh and prissy attitude, largely concerned with the quality and appearance of her floof. Nonetheless, she accepts the title of champion for the Tundra with pride, knowing she's the best and it'll take the best to find the Prophet's key. The child of what amounts to a noble family in her wintry home of capital city Rain, Velvet was born with the dear equivalent of a silver spoon in her mouth, to the extent that she usually speaks with an affected accent to showcase her higher class. Velvet has some solid zoning options with her cryomancy, as suggested by her large magic meter that constantly refills, but she's got some great normals as well. The little critter with her there is a winter sprite. They live in a soft symbiotic relationship with the deer folk, the sprites considering the deer something like pets, and the deer enjoying having their every need catered to before they even ask, much like I'm sure my cats view me. Velvet is an analog to Friendship is Magic's rarity, mostly in that both are concerned with high society and visual presentation. Our next character is the closest thing to a horse on the roster, the unicorn known as Oleander. A wielder of dark magic, Oleander is characterized as smart-mouthed, rebellious, and cocky. In spite of this, she truly does want to save Fenum from the predators, but with dark magic and not the pure light sorcery preferred by her peers. You might be saying, hey wait, aren't oleanders usually light-colored flowers? And yes, they are, as was the unicorn in question's fur until she started reading from the eerie tome she discovered, known as the Unicornomicon.
Roughly translated, Book of the
Unicorn.
The spirit within it, called Fred so nobody has to try and pronounce the quote-unquote unspeakable word currently on screen, told her she would be the one to use dark magic to save the world. And who is she to argue with a demon thing who tells her she's right? Oleander looks to accomplish her destiny with a damaging teleport, dangerous traps which are pages from the book itself, summoning Fred for aid, and of course, the dark arts. I really like how she regains magic by holding the magic button in neutral and reading the book. Oleander is sort of a twisted reflection of Friendship is Magic's main character, Twilight Sparkle, a nerdy, sorceress unicorn who always tries to do the right thing. If fast and frenetic is more your style, might I recommend Paprika the Alpaca. While her original lore story has some contradictions to what's presented in-game, one can appraise that her desire to share her boundless love and enthusiasm grates on the other nomadic Alpaki peoples, and one way or another she winds up as their champion in a bid to get rid of her. Paprika's move list thus involves a lot of hugs, kisses, offering gifts of food at extreme speed, and even attempting at fitting the opponent for a sweet t-shirt. If Paprika's adversary eats the thrown snacks by attacking near it, it refills her magic meter, otherwise she just gets it back at the start of the round. Her counterpart from the show is Pinkie Pie, though unlike Pinkie's characteristic boisterous sense of humor, Paprika only speaks in titters and spurts. Unwittingly chosen as champion of the meadow, Pom is a nervous sheep with little self-esteem who is helped through her fight by a cute sheepdog family. She's an analog for My Little Pony's Fluttershy, being both timid and having a great love for animals. See, she's what the FGC calls a puppet character, her magic being used for spawning pups to attack her opponent with strong special moves to compensate for her own weak normals. The trick here is that they're a little difficult for novices like me to wrap their heads around, but an expert can be a real nightmare with them. You might wonder why such an anxious character was declared her region's champion, and it's entirely because she was the one who insisted her people should try to fight to protect Fenum in the first place. These sheep of the pasture kinda seem like they might be assholes. The final fighter comparable to one from Friendship is Magic. Tianhuo's name means Skyfire, which lives up to the speedy daredevil Rainbow Dash. She's a Longma, which sounds like the setup to a lame middle schooler's punny joke, but is actually a mythological Chinese hooved dragon. In Fenum, Longma are all members of the military sworn to protect the sacred daughter of heaven, empress of the minuscule yet mighty realm of magnanimous magma, lava, and fire, and the volcanic lands of Huoshan over which she presides. This particular hooved dragon is the captain of the Imperial Guard and the empress's right-hand defender. Tianhuo exhibits a stern confidence, sure in her abilities without being fully conceited like some of the other roster members, and indeed her inspiration. Predictably, she uses Flight and Flame in combat and only regenerates magic meter when not flying. We move into the DLC characters here, although this first one was eventually added to the default roster. Shanty the Goat is an aspiring pirate who was orphaned at a young age and raised by the crew of the Capricorn. In order to prove her mettle, she's been ordered to steal the Prophet's Key, a challenge implied to take place after much of the main story. Shanty's moveset seems inspired by capoeira, and she uses little dashes to help her vary up positioning and execute acrobatic kicks. My favorite part is the command she uses to refill her magic meter. The longer you hold it down before executing, the louder the pirate noise she makes and the more meter she gets filled. Delightful. Our next two DLC characters are the fathers of core cast members, the first being Texas the Bull, voiced by Patrick Seitz. You may have guessed his daughter is Arizona given his name and Countess. Texas is slow and beefy, doing tons of damage with his attacks. His magic makes use of the cowbells on ropes around his neck, and hitting an opponent specifically with one of the bells will recover some of said magic. These bell attacks can even chain into command grapples, making Texas a beast. Filling the stereotype of the traditionalist father, he's a bit past his prime and concerned with his daughter's safety first and foremost. Sadly, the remaining DLC characters have the least amount of story to them, so these last few entries will be a little light. We'll get to why momentarily. The other daddy, I'll stop. Velvet's father is Stronghoof Hoofstrong, a beloved fighter and handsome chap among the deerfolk. You can't argue with this. Look at his lovely braided floof. Check out that rack. While he's eager to put on a show for his adoring fans, he's actually among the more gregarious and humble deer folk, certainly not as elitist as his darling daughter. He also uses ice magic, though his manifests in frigid weaponry that he uses to bully his opponents. We have a few pieces of trivia about Hoofstrong, the first of which being that Stronghoof is a title among his people awarded for glory in battle. Additionally, the jewelry he wears is a symbol of marriage, though Velvet's mother appears to be canonically missing. Oh yeah, and he's voiced by frickin' Christopher Sabat. You know, Piccolo, All Might, Garland.
I, Garland, will knock you all down!
Nidra is probably my favorite character, a tapir who wields dreamy night magic, which is said to be the true counterpart to the unicorn's light magic, meaning the power Oleander manifests as something much older and more sinister. She seems to be searching for her sister, but little else is known about her. I love Nidra's snoozy stances, recovering her magic by napping, the puffs of dream magic she uses to fight, and her presentation in general. It's a shame we never got more of this sweet dreamer. Finally, we have Bai He, a second Longma soldier who was initially released in an absolutely broken state. And I don't just mean she was overtuned, she had several extremely exploitable infinite combos that were eventually patched out of the game. A botched mission saw Bai He wounded and disgraced, and in a bid to rebuild her honor, she enlisted with the Empress's personal guard as Tianhuo's second in command, working in concert with her to defend their homeland. She's probably the zoniest zoner in the game, with lots of fireball attacks, still managing to be distinct from her battle sister despite their matching techniques of Flight and Flame. Them's Fightin' Herds has a great roster and is a good game with a load of fan support. Literally since they were crowdfunded. They had A-tier voice actors, a legendary creative swooping in to save them from development hell, so what happened to finally put the kibosh on it? Well, while a story had long since been written, turning a script into a finished product is easier said than done. There's a reason I only do these episodes once a month, for example. Main 6 had issues keeping staff before the game even left early access, and sadly things didn't get any less complicated when they were acquired as the latest Matryoshka, whose largest stall is called Maximum Entertainment. In December of 2023, when Main 6 was pushing toward getting the final DLC, complete story mode, and gameplay enhancements finished, Maximum laid off most of the staff just a few months before crowing about a great earnings year. Nothing remains on the horizon for them's Fightin' Herds, and we were honestly lucky to get that final balance patch in April of 2024 that fixed everything the previous February update broke. I'm not going to get into all the drama of it, but you can clearly place the blame on Maximum Entertainment. They decided the game wasn't going to be supported anymore, and for now, it's over. The grim fate of the property aside, this was pretty cute. A decent refresher from the misery and gore so frequently typical of the genre. But I know some of y'all prefer the dark and edgy, so next time on Violent Profiles, we'll finish an unofficial trilogy of gritty games in that vein. If you're impatient to see that episode, consider supporting us on Patreon at the $5 tier to get that and future episodes a whole month early. Your name will join the illustrious ranks of the high scores currently on screen, and you'll have exclusive access to old Violent Profiles episodes that are no longer public. They're full of lies and half-truths. How fun. Until next time, white out.